I'm Kate.
I'm Avon.
And I'm Sonia. And today we're dishing with you from the Oceanaire, located at 1201 F Street Northwest by Metro Center. Just come on by, have some wonderful seafood. And that's
like today is all about oyster. We do have oysters, these wonderful oysters that have a little bit of
Parmesan cheese.
Parmesan cheese, and of course everyone comes for Maryland crab cakes or sea bass or scallops or lobster or anything. But today we're all about oysters.
We are.
We're all about oysters because we have Bryan Gomes, the Director of Special Programs at the Oyster Recovery Project, with us. Thanks for being on with us, and thanks for educating us about the Oyster Recovery Project. You want to tell us a little bit about what it is?
Our partnership has been around about 15 years. We bring together groups to kind of preserve the oyster. It's a keystone species in the bay. We have watermen working with government agencies, working with private interest groups, all in an effort to bring the oyster back to...
But you said that it's a partnership. Actually, with the Oceanaire, you have a partnership with them. But how do you conserve oysters when people are eating them?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have some here.
How does that work?
We have over 30 establishments, whether they are restaurants, catering companies, wholesalers, etc., that donate their shell back to our nonprofit organization. I brought in a little teaching tool prop from downstairs where they collect the shell here at Oceanaire.
That's
convenient. So, what's going on now in the bay, in the wild, runoff pollution, you have a layer of silt on the naturally occurring oyster reefs in the bay and rivers. When the oysters go to spawn, the larvae swim around for a couple weeks, and when they're ready to put their root down and live somewhere for their life on another oyster shell, hopefully, in the wild, that silt layer doesn't allow them to attach and off and die. Very low percentage of reproduction. Oyster Recovery Partnership kind of helps that out with a Head Start program where the shell that we collect from all these restaurants gets clean, dried, and aged for about a year and would look very much like this shell. And then in a separate facility at the hatchery, they take raise the water temperature of fertile oysters, play some Barry White music,
get some action going.
Then the spawn is on, and all those babies...
I like that.
That is on.
T-shirt. That's serious.
Yeah, do you sell that on your website? We'd like to have some of those.
So cool. Raise money that way. I always have ideas. So how did we learn that this was a problem? Like, how did you know all this would be? Like, I would have no clue. I would just go to the store and eat oysters
and then toss it.
And toss them.
Yeah.
So how do we know that there was a problem with the oysters not attaching and the silt and everything else?
To kind of go historical for a second, over 400 years ago when Captain John Smith came up the bay and the water was crystal clear and they were running aground on oyster reefs everywhere, the entire bay could be filtered by the oyster population in just a few days. Wow. Today, that same oyster population, it takes over a year for that process to happen.
So that's why the bay is like not polluted almost, but like there's a lot of
that is a large
crap in there.
Yes, because these guys, an adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. So a bathtub full of water can be filtered by
one oyster.
One adult oyster.
So without a partnership like yours, what are we looking at? We're looking at just like muddy water?
We are, not only do they clean the bay, but they also create awesome habitat for other key species in the bay. So when you have an oyster reef that is flourishing and prominent, you will have little bait fish, little mud crabs. They attract.
It's like habitat for humanity for...
It is. You have a nice three-dimensional reef, and then you have the blue crab, which is a delicacy as well in this area. And
I think our crab cakes are made out of blue crab. This is like all the stuff you could have if you have a healthy ecosystem, right?
Yeah. So they help the ecosystem.
Yes.
They actually add.
They clean the water, and they create a great habitat for other critters to come over and say, "Hey, you guys are doing a good thing here."
So when you take the shells and you age them to perfection, and then what do you do with those oysters? Do you then put them in the wild?
Yeah, so back to that science center at the hatchery, our partners over at Horn Point Lab in Cambridge, Maryland, they take the shell. It gets clean, dried, and aged. It'll be like this. They stimulate the spawn. You have all those baby oysters that are fed for about 2 weeks. All the red, green, and blue algae and plankton they can eat and get fat and happy. And then they'll look and see they're about to stick their foot down, and they can look in a microscope and take like a sample setting. And then at that point, setting big metal setting cages of these empty oysters, get the baby spat poured into it, They attach, and then they get taken out on a workboat into the bays and rivers to go on sanctuaries and reefs.
Okay, I have another stupid question, I feel like. So this is just one, right? And I feel like oysters the difference between clams and oysters, I keep getting confused. So don't they need like two parts to attach?
That's
so
how
do you need those two pieces for them to...
Oysters on the half shell.
The babies, actually, and you can see on here where there were smaller oysters starting to grow off that. So they're kind of a semi-hard state when they are in the larva state. They go onto there, and then they'll start growing off there, and they'll grow their two sides of the shell.
Oh, okay.
This is just kind of an anchor.
Oh, I see.
Shell.
Oh, so they're not actually sort of, it's not like a little piece of fish coming in and visiting.
It's not
right,
like
that's what I was,
it's not like another oyster's home.
Right.
They're just using the
They need
shell
something to
is
rivet
the
to.
substrate that they attach to.
Huh.
And
it's an ideal situation for them to attach and live. And
yep.
grow.
And
now, this isn't the only place in the United States where oysters grow. So do you work all over the United States, or are you just really focused on the Chesapeake?
Oyster Recovery Partnership, we are based out of Annapolis, Maryland. We also have some full-time staff over on the Eastern Shore, but we're a pretty small nonprofit, and we are expanding and working out of the Annapolis, Chesapeake Bay region. We have this Shell Recycling Alliance that we're talking about right now has partners here in D.C. In addition to the Ocean Air, we do Old Ebbitt Grill. And sometimes the Reef up in Adams Morgan donate their shell when they do oyster festivals. And then we have about a dozen restaurants in Baltimore, about 8 in Annapolis, and about a handful in Ocean City as well. That was just started this summer.
So you clearly want people, whenever they're going out for their seafood, when they know they want oysters, to choose a restaurant that works with you on this project. How do they know whether or not they're working with you? Do the restaurants advertise?
Yes, we have promotional material that we pass on to the restaurant. If they go to our website, oysterrecovery.org, they can find out a lot about the program. My contact information is on there.
And how else can people help? Other than coming to a restaurant that they know is going to recycle the half shells, what else can people do to help you in your efforts?
We have volunteers that can help us out. Since we are a small nonprofit, as much help as we can get is greatly appreciated.
They can light the candles along the spawn areas when the music's going.
Like in all phases of this the operation, whether it's maybe with volunteering in the hatchery or with you guys personally in the office.
I'm the guy on the ground that picks up shell 2 days a week. One day in Baltimore and then another day in Annapolis and D.C. and I have a volunteer each day that drives around with me and helps collect shell.
And this takes time actually. What more than anything else, it takes time, because in order for this to be ready, you need at least a year of nurturing and feeding it, and aging it. So basically, time is what you need versus other charities where you need all this massive amount of
yes, and this is a very limited natural resource. So you're asking about what other states are doing. I was researching what other coastal states are doing with their oyster populations, and I believe it's North Carolina that has made it a law that you can't throw shell in the trash or in a dumpster.
Well, it seems very glamorous to come and eat your oysters, but the whole act of keeping it a sustainable population is a lot of hard work. And
part of the
we
recycling.
Appreciate your hard work as always, and we appreciate you learning from this episode. And we hope you'll come back and see who we're dishing with right here next time.
Thank you, guys.